Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl, and here we are back for another one of our Warhammer The Old World videos. Now this is a bit of a faction focus. Essentially we're going to look at the Warhammer Fantasy Battle army books from 8th edition. We're going to look at the different units, kind of how they played, what kind of rules they had, talk a bit about some of the legendary lords, to try and give us a bit of an idea of how we think they might pan out in Warhammer The Old World. Now, I want to make clear we know nothing about the rules of the Old World or the factions, and we know that many of the factions are going to be in a legendary status. And so, we don't know how those rules will pan out. But you kind of think that if you the sort of the role of a unit and kind of what its focus was would have a similar vibe and a similar feel, because that's the lore of the unit itself, like how it plays. So the first one up is going to be the Dark Elves. I've chosen that because that was the most viewed of our Old World faction focuses. And of that, we are basing it on the 8th edition book, which is what we've got here. We are going to be limited to the books that we have in our possession. A lot of the online resources have disappeared. I don't know where they've gone, but I don't know if that's a cease and desist from Warhammer or people getting nervous, but those resources have gone. So I'm going to be limited to the books I actually have in my possession. So in terms of the Lords, which is going to be first, so what we've got here, Dark Elves Faction Focus, Lords is going to be up first, and that's going to be our first episode. And with that, we're then going to follow on from there. Now, please bear in mind, everything that I'm going to talk about in these videos has been based upon personal opinion, memories from many years ago now, and also my local meta. I'm not a tournament player. My local meta was my local Games Workshop, my local gaming club, and my circle of friends where we played in each other's homes and so on. So, it's very much my local meta in terms of my thoughts and feelings in the game. So without further ado, let's jump into the first section then, which is our Lords. So, Dark Elves Lords. So the first one there is the Dreadlord. And you can see a picture of him there mounted on the black dragon. That was the last model that was available. That was a dual kit with the Supreme Sorceress. So in terms of the Dreadlord himself, then, he had pretty high weapon skill and ballistic skill, initiative and leadership. Initiative and leadership for the Dark Elves being pretty high across the board. That was kind of their thing. But the Dreadlord himself having quite a high ballistic skill and weapon skill. But also common to the Elves was quite low strength, low toughness, and a low amount of wounds in comparison to others. When you look at sort of, the bulk of the bodies are toughness 3, right? So quite a low there. In terms of the Lord himself, though, he is very flexible. He had a huge number of weapon options, everything from repeater crossbows, lances, great weapons, shields, options for light and heavy armor, and sea dragon cloaks, which gave you scaly skin, 5+. So, he had a huge amount of options there, as well as, of course, the options to take different magic items, weapons, amulets, and so on, and armor. So, a very, very flexible character. Very flexible also in terms of mounts. He could be on foot, but he could also be on a dark steed, a cold one, dark Pegasus, manticore, cold one chariot, or indeed on the black dragon that you see in the picture. Special rules wise, he gets pretty much the basic special rules that nearly everything in the Dark Elf roster gets. Nearly everything, not quite, but most. Always strikes first. So you're looking at an army here that virtually army-wide has always strikes first. In Warhammer 8th, that basically meant that, as what it says, but if you came up against somebody that also had always strikes first, it would then go on initiative. value. But the other part of that, so we've got initiative value, but they would essentially fight simultaneously. So if both units have always fight first, the fight happens simultaneously, so you can't kill them off before they get to attack. Both sides get to attack. But the other part that some people forget on Always Strikes First is that not only do you get to strike first, but if your initiative is equal to or higher than the enemy unit, you also re-roll misses in close combat, which is pretty good. You also get Hatred High Elves, and you get Murderous Prowess, which is re-roll wound rolls of 1 in close combat. So he's re-rolling all his hits if his initiative is equal or higher, and he's re-rolling wound rolls of 1. That's the basic rules, and that's pretty much inherent across nearly every unit in the Dark Elf roster. So they were pretty good. They're pretty good. And if you look at the Dark Elf, look at the Lord here. He does start off quite cheap, but man, he can get expensive real quick. If you start kitting him out with gear, magic items, and a mount as well, he can get very expensive. I mean, he can be a beast, but you put him on a dragon. The dragon itself is double the points of the Lord. So, you're going to be, making him very expensive very quickly. And that's one of the things that you were sometimes, you kind of felt, I want to put this on him and that on him, this gear and this magic item, and I want to put him on a dragon and everything. And yeah, so you have to think about what your aim with the army is and how much you really want to spend on Lords. Of course, Lords, could be up to 50% of the points cost of the army. So, in a 2,000 point army, you get 1,000 points of Lords, but a fully kitted out, Dark Elf Dreadlord on a dragon, and you're probably into 500 plus points in that already. So, but he a good character with huge amounts of flexibility depending on what you want to build your general as, and typically he would be the general. But you also have the option of a Supreme Sorceress, who also could be a general. Stats, as you'd expect for a lot of casters, or most casters, stats are low across the board except the leadership. Got no weapon options, but can be a level 3 or level 4 wizard if you pay the points. Mainly dark magic, or can use one of the 8 basic laws. She gets mount options of Dark Steed, Cold One, Dark Pegasus, Manticore, or Black Dragon. I've put the Supreme Sorceress here on a Cold One. But the dual kit you saw with the Black Dragon, you can also get a Supreme Sorceress on. In terms of special rules, pretty much the same as the Dreadlord, but also gets Hecate's Blessing, which again is pretty much a standard Dark Elf rule for casters, which means they get +1 to cast dark magic. So while you can use other laws, you really want to be leaning into dark magic to get that +1 to your cast. Overall, I mean, not much to say about the Sorceress. She does what she says in the tin, was quite popular as a powerful caster, often used with a cheap, fast mount. So you kind of, depending if you want to have a, nice, powerful Dreadlord as your combat character, you'd want to keep your casters a bit cheaper. And some people went for, kind of a much more caster-heavy army. Some people went for a more combat-heavy army, though, magic in the 8th edition was really, really potent and really important. So casters did play a huge role in that. So I would often be using a Supreme Sorceress, though it was a lot more common to find your Sorceress or Supreme Sorceress on foot, because you'd bury them in a big unit of infantry to try and keep them safe. When you put them out on a dragon and so on, they become quite easy to target. And so, that's something that happened a lot more. Okay, moving on into our Dark Elf Lords. The third one we have here is a High Beastmaster, and you can see that is quite an old miniature in the picture. So in terms of stats, he had pretty high weapon skill, ballistic skill, initiative, and leadership, a lot like a Dreadlord, along with the low strength, toughness, and wounds. No weapon options. He comes with a spear, light armor, and the Sea Dragon Cloak. So Sea Dragon Cloak there is your scaly skin 5+, stacking with the light armor for 4+. And he must be mounted, right? He must be mounted on a Scourger, a Chariot, or Manticore, and of course, your mount confers additional save to you as well. Again, he's got the basic special rules, but he also comes with Beast Slaver, which is a monster within 3 inches, gets plus D3 attacks. Personally, I rarely saw this Lord. As I said, then most people preferred the flexibility of the Dreadlord if they were going to take some sort of combat character. Sometimes maybe people would take it if they were going for a more monster-heavy army, but we certainly, in my meta in the 8th, I saw a lot less of these big monsters and a lot more of big infantry blocks, you know, and you really need monsters in your army to get that benefit. And of course, a 3-inch range is not very big, so you're kind of bunched up as well. So, yeah, I mean, you know, it does have value if you combine him maybe with a couple of War Hydras, for example. Maybe with a couple of Charybdis, but overall he was not that popular a choice. Certainly not in my local area. The Sorceress, pretty much Supreme Sorceress, did reign supreme in terms of being the #1 choice for a Lord, closely followed by the eminently flexible Dreadlord. The final one is the Black Ark Fleetmaster, still available today in a start collecting box, or he was at least, and a relatively new model as well, miniature for a Warhammer Fantasy Battle range. So he came out pretty much close to the end. He's only got medium weapon skill and ballistic skill initiative. He's got pretty high leadership, as most Elven units, and the usual low strength, toughness, and wounds. No weapon options. He comes with the 2-hand weapons for that extra attack, and then the light armor and Sea Dragon Cloak, giving you a 4+ save, and then the usual special rules. But he also comes with Show No Weakness. Show No Weakness there, which is kill enemy character, and he and his unit become unbreakable until the end of the turn. Yeah, that's okay. I mean, again, as with all the generic characters, you can kit them out with magic items. That really starts to push their points cost up. Again, not something I saw much of on the tabletop. I mean, yeah, you'd kind of want to run him in a unit with Black Ark Corsairs, but he was rarely seen. His special rules quite lackluster. He doesn't give any specific bonuses to Black Ark Corsairs or anything. So overall, not that popular a choice. You know, if you want a combat character, you go with the Dreadlord and you make him, you know, eminently flexible, and you can pretty much give a Dreadlord, you know, the hand weapons, the Sea Dragon Cloak and all that. Plus, you can put him on a mount. Plus, you can, you know, give him heavy armor. Plus, you can give him a lance if you want, or you know, the Show No Weakness isn't enough of a good rule to sort of overcome that, and so that brings us to the end of our Dark Elf Lords section. So I hope that was interesting. Give you a bit of a flavour of what the 4 Lords were, how they played, and you know, how popular they were. Like I say, Supreme Sorceress was the most popular option by far, closely followed by a Dreadlord, who it was the flexibility Dreadlord about how you could kit him out with pretty much anything, put him on any mount, and on top of that, give him a whole host of magic items, with the Beastmaster and Fleetmaster being a bit more situational, and therefore less popular for you know, similar points costs. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. And as always, if you want to see more content, please hit that subscribe button. It is totally free for you to do, and it means a lot for me. And as I said, this is the 8th edition rules that have come straight from the army book, which is in my possession, to give us a flavour of how the units, characters, and so on played back then, and how that might influence how they might play in Warhammer The Old World. Thanks for watching. You've been watching The Ghost Owl, and I'll see you all very soon.